Mic check, mic check. Hmm, hmm. Okay. Let's see here, man. Just gonna let that classical hit us for just a moment here as we start our 063 Tactical Tuesday live. Hello, welcome or welcome back to another episode of 063 Tactical Tuesday. Let's get into it, ladies and gents. How are we? How are we? How are we today, folks? It is 063 Tactical Tuesday once again, and we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today's episode is one that will be quite informational, but very laid back indeed. As you guys know, if you're familiar with my lives, we kind of got a very laid back vibe. We like to have some classical kind of going in the background. I like to let that hit. We first begin. Um, for those who are just joining and are unfamiliar with me, I am Lazarus Zander, and I am a gentleman of many different interests. And here at 063 Tactical, we do our best to uh, make sure that we stay diverse in our fields of information. Um, One of the many habits or activities I believe a lot of folks enjoy is the mentality of risk versus reward. So, with that kind of being said, I would like to actually go ahead and start today's live kind of discussing a game that provides both risk and reward um, when educated properly when it comes to this game, more or less. Some call it gambling, which its textbook terminology refers to as gambling is the wagering of something of value on an event with an uncertain outcome with the intent of winning something else of value. So, gambling thus requires three elements to be present at all times, truly. Consideration is one, risk is two, and the prize is ultimately number three. Uh, but the game on the books today is, like I said, the classic gamble of poker. Like, of all games, I feel truly that poker has been around um, for quite some time. While poker's exact origin is subject, like of debate. Um, and many game scholars, point to like I guess you could say our French counterparts' game of poke, and even our Persian counterparts, their game of Oznaz, and it's kind of an early inspiration for poker. And for that being said, it's like you have to take inspiration from a lot of different places, and hopefully, you joining this live is a space where you can feel inspired to go forth and doing what you believe in and what you feel is right for you and yours. So, more or less on the actual history of poker, like a little bit more is in the 19, or excuse me, in 1980, 1937, Foster, Foster's complete, like Hale, wrote that the game of poker as first played in the United States, five cards were given to each player from, a 20 pack. And it was like almost like it was almost like a instant connection for like Persians. They were like, hey, that's Osnaz. Like that's instantly our game. But it's kind of more or less with Americans. We kind of take our, little spin on things and kind of around the 1990s, the nation that poker is a directive of Osnov, began to kind of challenge gaming historians. And to certain degrees, however, poker was very popularized in the American South during the 19th century, more or less. And it kind of was a thing that happened along the Mississippi River, like New Orleans, kind of that bayou feel, man. Kind of like, you're having to do it on the waters, more or less. It's not something that's so mainstream that it's in every, vicinity that you go into around the 19th century. And, it's kind of around the 1830s. It helped spread around that time. Like I said, the 19th century, it helped spread the popularity of the game that we actually call poker. And it changed over more or less once it kind of expanded due to the popularity of it being played in these areas. And as most things do become popular due to this very special thing we call the military, or in any format of country, we call our military, very special. And they kind of take it on, and it becomes something that can become popular to civilian life as well. And once that happened, casinos kind of picked it up around like World War II. And poker really it grew very fast overall because of World War II, but ultimately it started to establish itself more or less with the actual World Series of poker around the 1970s. So a very, I wouldn't say very rapid expansion, because it took you know a little bit more than 100 years, almost 200, for it to really like catch on over here in the states. But ultimately, the mode that we all are kind of familiar with for the most part is Texas Hold'em. And that really is the one that's dominant over most poker games, and in the gambling scene, that truly came for the next few decades after the 1970s, once that World Series of poker was actually established. So it's just one of those things that for us here at 063 Tactical, I feel that poker is an art form. Poker is truly a relaxing game. Like, yes, it's ultimately a gamble. And that's what most people can look at it as. But if you actually learn the format, and you don't just necessarily play it for the money, you really can learn to enjoy the actual game and pleasure of poker. I feel as if me, because I do personally play poker myself, I do feel as if I've learned many different things over a poker table. Same as a lot of people would say with the game of chess. I'm very big on chess as well. I love chess. So even then, it's really cool to see how poker really it grew from something that was really, I guess you could say, in older times, it was taken from other cultures, but not necessarily taken and disrespected, but taken in kind of I guess you could say, I don't want to say improved on, because you don't want to disrespect anyone's culture, but it was just, it had its little additives that were really able to make that game over here in the states a little bit more of a staple that really can stand out with more divisive rules, truly, and a little bit more firm of a foundation, a little bit more comprehensive for most folks to kind of join in as beginners and truly understand how to go from point A to point B, how to go from, seeing a flop, that's a term that's used in poker. You have, different suits, ace, king, jack, queens, you got um heart, spade, club, and excuse me, diamond. There we go. You got your four different suits. So it's just one of those things that when you look at the game of poker, it really is, initially it looks like a game, but it really, for me, it teaches you a lot in life. You really could learn a few things. I definitely feel as if around the early 2000s, even now, I'm quite sure a lot of people were familiar with the song Poker Face. But I've come to learn, growing a little bit older, that it literally is a real expression. It really is something that, in that world, that you truly have to learn to have, because when you're playing, or as we would call it, gambling in that format, it really does come down to can you keep your composure after a loss just as much as you want to gloat and boast after a win. Can you not throw a temper tantrum after you lose a pot? Is that something that's gonna make you go into I've learned a lot of things. It's taught me, excuse me, how to really articulate a lot of different situations outside of the actual gamble in the game itself. And like I said, Texas Hold'em is really the one that dominates most formats of poker that you would go to. Like if you would go to a normal casino, most you'd see like a very popular, I guess, version of poker would be Texas Hold'em. No Limit Hold'em is I guess the nickname for it. But it dominates the gambling scene over the next few decades after that world series of poker was established. And once TV, as I kind of even expressed in my last live, with the impact of Netflix and just television in itself. Like I said, the television of poker at the time, it really made a very strong influence, and it increased its popularity truly because if you look at the actual game during the time, it really was ramping up during the turn of the millennium and resulting, poker, it kind of resulted in a poker boom. Excuse me. It kind of resulted in a poker boom. I'm malfunctioning everywhere. Excuse me. A few years, later, like I'd say, like a little bit later into the early, later 2000s, it became the game of poker today that we, know as a casual guys' night, a casual, you look and see the man cave and you're like, oh man, how's that going over there? And you usually look in and you're able to see maybe a poker table or something to that degree that the guys are able to sit down, have a good time, and not necessarily get their feelings hurt. We're not sitting here playing actual poker at some events. With private games, you could actually have a little fun with a few friends. And that's why I say it can be a gamble, but it can also be very educational. It can be very fun if you do actually learn the gamble game, whatever you'd like to refer to it as, uh, of poker. It's very popular, as a pastime for a worldwide audience. It's not just something that is done over here in the United States. You really can see that poker, and that's something that I guess I could point out for myself. Like even now, as I'm starting to really enjoy the game of poker, it still has the element of money. You still have to consider the actual money and format that you're playing with it in. And when I look at poker, it's taught me that just as much as people come and play these pots in USD, I'm actually starting to see and kind of, I guess, understand a little bit more, even though I've not understood the euro and pound as much. By watching poker, I can kind of look at how much they're throwing out into these pots and kind of determine the actual status or how would I say that, the actual, how do I format that? Okay, either way, with euro and pound, I'm able to see games that these players are, just as much as they play in USD. I'm seeing these $1,000,000, $1,000 hands, and you can have way simpler games, but I'm watching different, types of games. When I participate, I like to play online poker. That is like I said, it's a pastime in itself, and that's fun. But you look at the actual dynamic, which poker is, there is money involved. So like I said, with euro and pound, I'm able to look at these pots and and kind of look at how they kind of translate over, how they kind of like I said, transfer over into USD, the actual currency, how much they're actually putting into each of these pots when they're actually gambling. So it's a really fun game at the pure core that it takes concentration. And I truly believe that with poker, it takes a bit of, hmm, it takes a bit of patience because poker games are not usually something that go by in, uh, 20, 30 minutes. I mean, they definitely can, but when you're dealing with experienced players in poker, you're kind of able to see the different sets of body language, psychology, mentality in people, and see how people really think of, I guess you could say, the gamble of money. As I said, it's a consideration, a risk, and a reward. Ultimately, those three things have to be involved for it to be considered a gamble. And poker ultimately does involve all of those things. You have to consider what you're doing every time you get that. In the sense of Texas Hold'em, you get that two. You get that two in your hand. You have to consider what you are able to do with those things, but also you have to consider what your counterparts are able to possibly do with their hands. Um, and then you look at the risk that, hey, your hand that you've considered thus far might not actually, it might not actually be as strong as your counterparts may be. So if you take this risk here, is it going to be worth it? But ultimately, you go ahead and you consider this and you look at that risk, you said, it's whatever. I'm going to go ahead and get at it. It's whatever. I'm going to see what happens. You go ahead and take that risk. And you go ahead, as I did state earlier, you see that flop. And we're going to go ahead and give an example here. Say you got a hand such as Jack of spades and seven of hearts. Okay. I'm going to be random here. And on the flop, and on the flop, so you got other opponents, right? So to your left or to your right, you'd have a person possibly, and you see this person here, they go ahead and say, you know what? They take a consideration of their cards they have, and they see what everybody else is doing. Because in poker, you have a big blind and little blind, or small blind, as it's called. So, but ultimately, there's a pot that everyone tosses into, and that pot is ultimately won by one person. So, when you look at it, the person on your right takes their risk in consideration. The person on your left takes their risk into consideration. Person on your right says, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and stick around this pot. They go ahead and call the pot that costs, let's say, $5. We're gonna be small here. We're not gonna do anything big. They go ahead and call it for $5, right? Go ahead and toss their $5 chip in. Now, ultimately, everyone, I guess, has $100. We'll go ahead and say it like that. So, and that's how you can level, win more money because everyone starts at a certain point, but people are able to win different pots, different strategies that are being implemented to kind of get your stack, get you on the big stack, get you on the big count. When it comes to the chips, you want to be the big dog at the table, kind of being able to not necessarily bully your way through it, but having some leeway just in case you ever do take a risk that does not turn out to be, as I'm ultimately kind of making the point to get to, the reward. So, like I said, the person on the right says stick around. They go ahead, throw that $5 chip in. They're still sticking around the pot. You say, all right, I like my cards too. I like my chances. I'm going to take that risk. You go ahead and throw your $5 in. See the person on your left, though. This person on your left, they ultimately feel as if, hey, their card is way better than both of your hands. So they go ahead and they do something that we call here in poker the raise. They go ahead and toss in $10 chip, right? So now you're sitting there like, whoa, okay, what's going on? Hold on. Like, why is it that he tossed five on my right? I tossed five. Everything's cool. Everybody's chilling. Everybody's cool. He's got my left. He's getting kind of okay. Whoa. All right, buddy. He tossing 10 in. But that also resets the pot. And it also makes the opponents going forth have to toss in $10 into that pot instead of five. Right? So now you've tossed five. He's tossed five. This person on your left has now raised 10. So now in total, we have $20 in this pot thus far, right? So now every player going forth, we're going to say he has 3 players after him, right? Every player going forth has to enter in a $10 chip on the consideration and risk that they can possibly win that $20 pot right now. But if they enter in their money, that pot now then becomes bigger. Something to consider. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and get to the next guy. He goes ahead and he does something that we call here a fold. He says, man, I see the consideration of my cards. Everybody, man, that side of the board is getting a little hot over there, man. Okay. This guy on my immediate right at this point, he just raised. He's obviously up in the stakes. Do I want to take that risk? You know what? Not my lane. I don't think my hand is strong enough. I'm gonna go ahead and fold. I'm gonna go ahead and you gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold. Not gonna go into it. Either way. So the guy right there, he goes ahead and he folds. Next guy next to him, he says, okay, man, this guy folds. Maybe he didn't have so much of a strong hand. He took his consideration. He took his risk. He didn't like what he had. He folded. But this guy here, we're going to go ahead and say he has the mother lode of all mother loads. We're going to give him what we call the big, big daddy hand. You know what I'm saying? The double aces. You know what I'm saying? He has the double aces. He's like, you know what? Forget all you guys. I'm going to go ahead and re-raise, something that we call a re-raise. So the guy is now tossed 10. This guy is going to go ahead and add $15. So this guy is now tossed $15 in. So now that pot that was 20 is now is now 35. And now the guy to his immediate left will now either have to call or fold for $15 instead of the 10 that was just being placed. So everyone's now he just reset the pot again. So now the guy to his immediate left at this point is like, you know what, dude, you guys are getting wild. It's 4 guys in this one pot at this point. It's getting hot in there, man. I don't want anything to do with this. I'm taking my consideration. I'm taking the risk of this gamble, and I'm not liking the outcome of it because not only that, I'm seeing that 4 other people are also taking the consideration and risk of their gamble. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it safe, as a lot of people like to say, and fold this hand. Boom, he folds. So now the pot is reset. We're going to go ahead and go all the way back to the guy that's on your immediate right, right? So now, in order for him to call, and we still haven't even gotten to the flop, in order for him to call, he has to now establish putting $15 more into the pot. He says, you know what? It's getting hot in here. I called for $5 to start this pot, man. I don't even know how we got here. What is going on? So I said I love this game because it's so complex and you can learn so much. And I'm really working everyone through a pot of poker, but bear with me here. He says, you know what? It's too much here. It's getting hot in here, Nelly style. Okay, burning up. Let's get up out of here, man. Fold. I'm out of this. I can't enter in 15, man. So this man has already entered it. He gambled $5 of his dollars away and didn't get anything from it. You understand the consideration and risk in that? He put $5 in and didn't get anything out of it. So now it's back on you. You say, okay. Sitting there with that jack and that 7. But he's sitting there, guy down there, he's sitting there with that ace. You don't know that, though. You don't know that. But he's playing it cool. He re-raised. So he must have something decent. But you say, hey, consideration of risk, I'm going to go ahead and take that risk. You go ahead and enter in your 15, now making it $20 that you've now entered into the pot. Okay? And that 15 is going to round that up to $50 for the pot, correct? The guy to your left says, you know what? Both of you guys are wild. I'm not sticking around for this. I'm out. He folds. Now it's on you and the gentleman. It's a $50 pot. You guys went from $5 to $50 in a matter of one round in the table. See how poker it gets wild. Either way, you go ahead. You're like, man, I'm scared. Okay, I risked my money. I don't want to lose it, but at the same time, I wouldn't be too mad if I won this $50. And when I started off with putting $5 in, Initially, I'm putting $20 in. So ultimately, you're only winning $30 back due to everybody else, truthfully. But either way, you're getting your money back and then some. So you're making a profit back on that hand. You go ahead and get to the flop. Dealer flops the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. You get Jack, Jack, 7. Now the hype in you says, "Ah, let me go down." No, no, not in poker, okay? No, that is not what you're supposed to do, okay? Because that can be the difference between your opponent paying you off, paying you more money, or you having to now pay your opponent. So, or not opponent, I don't want to put it in that format, but excuse me, that player. So, with that being said, you go ahead and get to it, and the guy goes ahead and says, "All right, this hand here, you didn't overreact. You didn't do it. You didn't do the magical dance. You stayed calm. You stayed collect. You kept your poker face. Okay. Um, the guy says, okay, I like what I'm seeing here. He goes ahead and tosses in 5. He raises the pot to 5. So now it's $55 in the pot. You go ahead and throw 10 in to re-raise him to show that your hand is just overpowerful. You don't want to scare him off though. So now it's 65 in the pot. 50 to 65. $15 just added. Man, cool, quick. He goes ahead and basically says, you know what, this guy, he's getting a little heated. I don't like what I'm seeing here. I'm going to go ahead and fold. He goes ahead and folds out of that pot, and now you've just won $65 back off of that hand of poker because you kept your calm and composure. You didn't have to get to the river. I wasn't going to get too plex into this hand, but either way, man, poker is a fun game, and it's definitely not a gamble that causes too much heartache. But also, poker is, in the family of card games. So, it's like when players wager over, which hand is best, specific game rules, that are similar to, most rankings in card games, it's kind of like they have a lot of, differences, but they have a lot of similarities as well. Truly, while the earliest known form of the game was played with just 20 cards, today it's usually played with, a standard deck. Although, some countries do have the short packs, they play with 32, 40, 48 cards maybe. Poker games, can vary in deck configuration. So the number of cards that are in play can definitely change up how the game is actually played. But it is, one of those things that is shared amongst a lot of people, a mutual love and respect for it. But all rules involve one or more rounds of betting, and it's the most modern like poker games that the first round kind of begins betting, and with one or two more rounds, some players make that forced bet out of others, kind of making them play a little bit more hardball than they'd like to. And that's what I love about poker. Really, like I said, that risk and reward. You ultimately got that reward at the end for starting off with that risk that you possibly thought was gonna, and that's what it's all about. It's a gamble, but it can be fun. The action, kind of proceeds clockwise, technically. So, that's how, the poker game is played. It goes in a clockwise formation. And as I kind of went into some of the terminologies, I don't want to go too much more in depth, but poker is something that we definitely enjoy here at 063 Tactical, and we play it often. And remember truly to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and get familiar with the notification bell. Trust you don't want to miss out on any of this. You want to be informed on these drops that I'm kind of doing in these lives. I want to switch over subjects. We're gonna go on a mildly. I want to mildly discuss, excuse me, the tobacco industry, because I feel like with poker, just kind of like I like to make connections with my topics at times, and with poker, I feel like tobacco industry has definitely helped poker in a lot of ways, and it impacts life itself. The tobacco industry. I enjoy a nice cigar here and there. So the study of tobacco is one that is of importance. And a fun fact, shout out to my guy Brandon at the Industrial Cigar Company down in Frisco, Texas, for teaching me this. But it takes approximately, if I do remember correctly, it takes 100 hours to craft most cigars. So when you learn, something such as that, it kind of teaches you to really appreciate it more or less as an art form. But the tobacco industry truly compromises of persons and companies who are engaged in the growth, preparation, sale, shipment, advertisement, and distribution of the good almighty tobacco plant and tobacco related products, cigarettes, all that good stuff. Yeah, yeah. But it is a global industry, and tobacco can grow in any warm, moist environment, which means it can be farmed on all continents except Antarctica. So if you find some in Antarctica, you must be magical, like truly. Either way, um, according to a lot of the people in the tobacco industry, it encompasses tobacco manufacturers, wholesale distributors and importers of tobacco products. Uh, truly, evidence like with tobacco, it is a very extensive industry, and it does, have its implement to public health policies. With the control on the actual, I guess you could say, distribution of tobacco, because is as much as it is a very world renowned product, it does come with its you got to take the good with the bad at certain points, and tobacco is definitely one of those things that I think a lot of us can have a very nasty habit on. um it's not a good thing, but it's also not a bad thing if you truly do appreciate the art of tobacco. It's not just something that is being done for the pure sentiment of pleasure. Like, I truly feel that it protects, like, excuse me on that, protects present and future generations. You know, from like a lot of health, social, and environmental consequences that tobacco can cause, and tobacco smoke really can have an effect on, because at the end of the day, like I said, it is not a good thing to have, and I'm not going to sit here and promote it as such. I just feel as if it is an art to a degree, and is a lot of things art. Botany is one of those things in a lot of ways that if you don't understand plants, then if you don't have that green thumb, like it's gonna always be like that. And um, not a lot of people truly understand plants. So when it comes to tobacco, not a lot of people understand that it actually is a plant. um, More or less, as to where it really can be something that is providing, just, and it's not to say it in that way, but it's not in a healthy way, but it's providing for families to some degree, because you have tobacco farms, you have people that have to grow these crops, or not necessarily have to, but people that grow these crops, and they there is a group out here that does enjoy that crop, that plant, ultimately. As anyone would want anyone to respect what they love and cherish, same as a tobacco lover. Ultimately, I don't promote that at all, but that is what it is. Tobacco is one of the most widely used addictive substances in the world. And it is a plant, native to the Americas, and historically, one of the most important crops grown by American farmers. So that's just exactly what I was kind of establishing, is just like the botany behind it. Like I said, the true art form of learning this crop, this plant, it's more than just, oh man, it kills, it kills, it kills. Like, it still was something that you had to learn how to do. You had to learn how to grow this plant, this crop. So ultimately, and it is an American thing. I don't know what our infatuation of tobacco or where it really or why it is so big, but I think it is a worldwide thing. Like I did state, it is the most or one of the most widely used addictive substances. So you can't help that, most areas around the world can be afflicted by it. More specifically, tobacco refers to any of the various plants of the, excuse me, nicotiana. Excuse me. That means like nicotine ultimately, and it's native to tropical America and widely cultivated for the leaves, which are dried and processed chiefly for smoking in pipes, cigarettes, and cigars, which is what I enjoy. So it also cuts farm like it also does chewing tobacco, which I'm like I said, not an advocate for tobacco here, but just stating the love like cigars, more or less, truly the art form and true appreciation for them. And they make snuff and like dipping tobaccos as well. For the more or less common like preparations of it, from like 1617 to 1793, tobacco was the most valuable staple export from English American mainland colonies and the United States. So, like, when you got to think about that, we it's been around for quite some time. It's been around for quite some time until the 1960s. The United States grew and manufactured and exported like more tobacco than any other country like involved with tobacco in agriculture um in general. So it's just one of those things that the price is in part determined like by the crop yields, and when we over here in America have the overflowing abundance of them, I think we're going to have a little bit more pull on that market. And it does vary, depending like local weather conditions, uh, on how that crop will be affected and how it will grow. And the price can also vary, like on the species or the culture, the cultivator, like, excuse me, yeah, the cultivator, excuse me, grown, in the total amount of it, like on the market that's ready for sale, the area where it's grown, more or less, in the health of the actual crop, and more or less, it's just tobacco has to be taken seriously. Like it's not one of those things. Like yes, it's not a good thing, but it does have a art form to it, and since 1964, um, medical evidence, like as I did say, it's deadly. It does state its deadly effects with the consumption of it, and it tells people that. Um, but it ultimately led to the decline of the usage of it, which is not bad by any format. But also with those farmers and those people that really did make, their kind of, living off of that in a way, it may have, kind of hurt, the way that they may have went about things. So, agriculturally, um, manufacturing wise and exporting the crop, it could affect the economy. Um, Policy and law restricting tobacco smoking, has increased globally, but almost excuse me for the T, trillion, almost 6 trillion cigarettes are still produced each year. Wow, yeah, that market is definitely not one to be played with. And representing over 12%, excuse me, it's increasing, over 12% every, year since 2000 almost. So tobacco is often heavily taxed to gain revenues for governments and as an incentive for people to not smoke. So it's not one of those things that should be too hard for you to stop smoking because it does cost and it is a very costly habit to have. Um, if you do it in moderation, I feel that's with anything. If you know how to have control and discipline on what you're doing, then it can ultimately be very positive. Um, not in the sense of tobacco, like I'm not saying like that, but just most things. If you take that time to kind of put a little due diligence and research into it, it will give back to you. And many, great things come out of the industry. Um, but always be aware of the potential health risk when consuming or being in an area of tobacco. Uh, 063 Tactical, me more or less. I'm not saying by any means go try tobacco or cigars. I'm just simply educating and expressing my appreciation for them. Um, thank you for tuning in to 063 Tactical Tuesday live tonight. Of course, we are grateful for all feedback and the love that's shown here. Ultimately, excuse me for my momentary lapses, but just ultimately want to be able to formulate my words correctly. And I just appreciate the love that is being shown every day. Mashallah, Alhamdulillah, Allah Akbar. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, like and share this live stream show. If you're enjoying the content at any point in time, if you enjoy what you're seeing here on the channel, uh, do go ahead and share it around. Do go ahead and make sure you like. Go ahead and leave me some comments so I'm able to take them back and give them back to the team, and we're able to produce a more effective product and give back to the audience what they're truly wanting to see. So, like I said, subscribe, hit the notification bell, like and share the live stream if you are enjoying the content. And go ahead and start off tonight's. I'm going to go ahead and get into it a bit earlier tonight. Just due, just due to the fact that it has an exponential like resource of information, but it is also 063 Tactical Tuesday topic time. Drum roll. All right. So, going to go ahead and get tactical real quick and to end out this live. But I did want to spend the most time on this topic because it is extremely extensive. And I want to make sure I'm giving the correct or not necessarily politically correct, but just I want to give good information and good knowledge to those of you that may not actually understand the background. So, without further ado, I would like to go ahead and discuss for the tactical topic tonight the very well known manufacturer of practically, must I say it, the world's most popular handgun firearm. Like today, we are going to discuss the almighty of almighty Glock for 063 Tactical Tuesday Live. So, for all my Glock lovers, and even those that are new to the platform or manufacturer, today's last portion of this live is definitely for you. Going to start with a small background of the history, then get into a more fun aspect, kind of talking about the actual models and calibers. But to begin, the company's founder, head engineer, the man himself, Gaston Glock, And just before I do actually go ahead and go into depth with any of this, I want to make sure that I am referencing and giving my proper credentials of references and sources back to Wikipedia. Ultimately, may not be the most credible, may not be the best source, but I also want to show that at the same time, I'm always going to make sure I'm giving you guys somewhat of a factual information in education here at 063 Tactical. So once again, my source, my information does come from Wikipedia. You can go ahead and look any of this up yourself that I'm giving you here tonight. If you want to learn more or know more about it, I just like to go ahead and explain it in my way. I feel it's a little bit more fun that way. Either way, let's go ahead and get back into it. But Gaston Glock, he had no experience with firearms or design or a manufacturer at the time. Their first pistol, the Glock 17. So those of you that are the Glock heads, my Glock boys will know that, of course. But the Glock 17 was their first official model produced by that actual manufacturer. And it was the prototype. Glock had extensive experience in advanced synthetic polymers, which is a very strong, I guess you could say, plastic in a way, but was instrumental in the company's design of the first commercially successful line of pistols with a polymer frame. So that's kind of where that popularity of polymer frames really started to kick in. Is with Glock. He kind of he'd look at his competitors and seen the metal, the steel, the difference in what his was able to do. So ultimately, Glock introduced, into the firearms industry, basically an anti-corrosion surface, as I did state, as a treatment for metal guns, like metal firearms, ultimately. And the development in 1980s, the Austrian armed forces were the kind of people that got them fresh and hot off the presses, is kind of would look at it, but announced that it would seek tenders for new modern duty pistols to replace World War II errors like German, Walters P38 handguns. And the Federal Ministry of Defense in Austria formulated a list of 17 criteria for the new generation service pistol, including requirements that it would be self-loading, fire the NATO standard 9 by 19 millimeter parabellum round, or excuse me, parabellum. I said parabellum. Excuse me, parabellum round. And the magazines were not required any means of assistance for loading to be secure, or like accidental discharge that could go off, and like the gun would drop, or anything at that point, and it go off. Like it had to be safety tested. It had to be efficient in the job that it was doing. After firing 15,000 rounds of standard ammunition, the pistol was inspected for wear. The pistol was to then be used to fire an overpressure test cartridge generated 5,000 bar. I don't want to go too in depth, but like just very, very powerful 9 millimeter. Like it was supposed to definitely hit something very powerful. I'll put it in that format. Glock became aware of the Austrian army's plan, procurement, and in 1982. So from 1980s, I told you guys back with that AK, back in the last live, man. Rapid progression with these firearms. Rapid progression. They ramp quickly. So from 1980, 1982, it assembled a team of Europe's leading handgun experts from military police and civilian sports shooting circles to define the most desirable characteristics in a combat pistol. Within 3 months, Glock developed a working prototype that combined proven mechanisms and traits from previous pistol designs. In addition, the plan was to make extensive use of synthetic materials and modern manufacturing technologies, which led to the Glock 17 becoming the most cost-effective candidate out of all the rest of their counterparts. So, several samples of the Glock 17 was definitely potent, or excuse me, it was patented because of the innovation of the Glock 17, and they were submitted for assessment trials in, like I said, 1982. And after passing all the extremely extensive, like tests, rigorous testing of endurance and abusive tests, Glock Glock came out on top, came out as king out of all the other manufacturers of the handgun that they were searching for, and it was adopted into the Austrian military and police forces in 1982 as the P80. So it originally kind of went by that name, the P80, Pistole 80, which it was an initial order of 25,000 guns, and the Glock 17 outperformed 8 different pistols from 5 other established manufacturers. H&K, German, we all love H&K, of course. And then we got Switzerland, also with the Sig, Beretta, they weren't doing too well against Glock. FN wasn't doing too well, and Browning definitely wasn't doing too well. So just like I said, Glock definitely, for those Glock heads out there, was definitely dominating in the field, and it came to show out. The results of the Austrian trial sparked a wave of interest in Western and Europeans overseas, particularly in the United States. And we basically, replaced the, I guess you could say, the almighty 1911 in that way with the good old Glock. So, around 1983, we inquired about, getting samples for the Glock 17 over here in the United States. And Glock was then invited to participate, in XM9 personal defense pistol trials. And it declined because of the DoD specifications, and it would require, extensive retooling of production equipment and provide 35 test samples on an unrealistic time frame. So they were kind of being a little bit pushy when it came to Glock. Glock was kind of setting a new precedent in the firearms industry, and everyone kind of felt that pressure. I just feel like Glock definitely had a extensive background by all means, and it definitely should be respected because they've come a long way. From the 1980s to now, I definitely can say that the popularity in Glock is, yeah, I don't think it compares to most firearm manufacturers. I think Glock is kind of synonymous with most people even thinking about a firearm. It's like, oh, is that a Glock? And that's a whole Beretta. As gun heads are like, no, man, that's a whole that's Sig. And you're like, oh, you know, but they, it's kind of become synonymous with Glock even just being any gun. So it's any firearm for the most part. People are like, oh, your rifle, that's a Glock. Like, what? Like, what do you mean? It's one of those things. So it's just when you look into Glock and its expansion, I feel that Glock is ever evolving, and it's always showing up. It's always showing us its reliability, and that's the reason I feel that its longevity was inevitable, compared to other firearm manufacturers, because Glock chose to be simple but be different, and they're about 5 generations currently. Yeah, Glock is very extensive, man. And for my Glock boys, for my Glock heads, for all you folks that love Glock out there, headache. But either way, we love you all here in the 2A community, and you definitely are a reason why people love to learn about being safe about firearms. So shout out to Glock once again. But as I did state, there are about 5 generations that have been produced, and they all have their own different qualities and even similarities. But I want to go ahead and get into each more specifically. The first generation of Glock pistols are notably recognized by their smoother, like pebble finish grip and finger grooves or finger grooveless frames. The Gen 1 frame pattern and design was used by Glock from 1982 through 1988 and predates the checkered grip patterns used in the second generation of Glock pistols. The first Glock 17s imported to the US were serialized with the alphanumeric two-letter prefix followed by three numbers stamped into the side barrel and a small metal plate inserted into the bottom side of the polymer frame. The first documented Glock 17s imported into the US were from the AF 000 series in January in 1986, and then followed by the AH 000 and the AK 000 and the AL 000. Excuse me, I'm sure that 000 I should be more proper instead of saying 000. But these early Glocks, Generation 1 pistols, like I did say, were serialized with the prefix AF through AN. So that's how you could kind of distinguish a actual early model Glock. But also were manufactured with a barrel that had a smaller overall diameter and a thinner bore walls, later known as pencil barrels. These early Glock 17 pencil barrel pistols are considered rare and highly desirable by Glock collectors. So, like I said, my Glock heads know you are looking out for those generation ones for sure. The barrels were later redesigned with thicker bore walls, and manufacturing continued to evolve and improve the design of Glock pistols. Many of the first generation Glocks were shipped and sold in the iconic Tupperware style plastic boxes. The earliest Glock boxes had ammunition storage compartments that allowed 17 rounds of 9mm to be stored with the pistol. The box design was later changed by Glock to meet BATF import requirements, and the ammunition storage compartments were removed. So, secondly, a midlife upgrade to the Glock pistols involved the addition of checkering on the front strap and trigger guard, so checkering serrations on the back strap as well. These versions, introduced in 1988, were formally referred to as second generation models. To meet American ATF regulation, a steel plate with a stamped serial was embedded into the receiver in front of the trigger guard, and in 1991, on the integrated recoil spring assembly, replaced the original two-piece recoil spring and design. The magazine was slightly modified, changing the floor plate and fitting the follower spring with a resistant insert at its base. That was the second generation of Glock. Thirdly, in 1998, the frame was further modified with an accessory rail. So the universal Glock rail is a lot of us call it similar to a Picatinny rail. I'm not sure how most folks would pronounce it, but either way, to allow the mounting of laser sights and tack lights, and other accessories. Thumb rests on both sides of the frame, and finger grooves on the front strap were added. Glock pistols with these upgrades are informally referred to as early third generation models. Later third generation models additionally featured a modified extractor that serves as a loaded chamber indicator. So you actually know when the chamber, the barrel had a round in it. And the and locking block was enlarged along with addition of an extra cross pin to aid the distribution of bolt thrust forces exerted by the locking block. The cross pin is known as the locking block pin and located above the trigger pin. The polymer frames of third generation models can be black, flat dark earth, or olive drab. Besides that, non-firing dummy pistols and non-firing dummy pistols with resetting triggers have a bright red frame, and simunition adaptation practice pistols, T models as they are referred to, a bright blue frame for easy identification. In 2009, the Glock 22 RTF2 um, was introduced and chambered in 40 Smith and Wesson, excuse me, Smith and Wesson, excuse me. This pistol featured a new checkering texture around the grip and new scallop fish scale shape serrations on the rear of the sides of the slide. Many of the existing models became available in the RTF2 version, including the 31, 32, 23, 21, and 19. Some of those did not have the fish gills. Just getting to the end here, getting a little bit more or less into that fourth generation. Um, at the 2010 SHOT Show, excuse me here, excuse me, the Glock, excuse me, at the 2010 SHOT Show, Glock presented the fourth generation, now dubbed Gen 4 by Glock itself, updates centered on ergonomics and recoil spring assembly. The initial two fourth generation models announced were the full-size Glock 17 and Glock 22, chambered for 9mm Parabellum and 40 Smith & Wesson cartridges, respectively. The pistols were displayed with a modified rough textured frame, grip checkering, and interchangeable back straps of different sizes. Gen 4 is rail marked on the side next to the model number to identify the fourth generation pistols. So that Glock was proud. They made sure to stamp their seal of approval on it and said, hey, we love our product so much. We're going to go ahead and start actually giving these their titles, their respective titles. We're reproducing them in these ways. We want to go ahead and give them the actual title. So they really were rebirthing in a way, Lazarus style, and just really consecutively reinventing themselves. Not necessarily changing it too much, but putting in the upgrades that needed to be there. The basic grip size of the fourth generation Glock pistols is slightly smaller compared to the previous design. A punch is provided to remove the standard trigger housing pin, and replace it with the longer cross pin needed to mount the medium or large backstrap that will increase the trigger distance by 2mm or 4mm. With the medium backstrap installed, the grip size is identical to the third generation pistols. That's pretty neat to know. The magazine release catches um, are enlarged and reversible for left-handed use. And excuse me here. For left-handed use, we'll go ahead and get to prayer once I go ahead and get done with this live. Excuse me to my brothers and sisters. But once again, the magazine release catches are enlarged and reversible for left-handed use. To use exchangeable magazine release feature, fourth generation Glock magazines have a notch cut on both sides of the magazine body. Earlier versions of the magazines will not lock into Gen 4 pistols if the user has moved the magazine release button to be operated by a left-hand user. Gen 4 magazines will work in older models, so that's pretty neat to know as well. Mechanically, fourth generation Glock pistols are fitted with a dual recoil spring assembly to help reduce perceived recoil and increase service life expectancy. Earlier subcompact Glock models such as the Glock 26 and Glock 30 have already used a dual recoil spring assembly that was carried over to the fourth generation versions of these models. The slide and barrel shelf have been resized, and the front portion of the polymer frame has been widened, internally enlarged to accommodate the dual recoil spring assembly. The trigger mechanism housing has also been modified to fit into the smaller size grip space, but the introduction ultimately of the fourth generation Glock pistols continued in July 2010 when the Glock 19 and Glock 23, the reduced size, I guess you could say compact versions of the Glock 17 and Glock 22 became available for retail. So in late 2010, Glock continued the introduction of the fourth generation models, and with the Glock 26 and Glock 27 subcompact variants. So, you got compact, but then you got subcompact. So that's even, man, that's even smaller. So even then, in January 2013, fourth generation Glock pistols were introduced, and commercially, during the annual SHOT Show, including Glock 20 Generation 4, along with other fourth generation Glock models, it stayed very consistent and it stayed very prevalent in our, I guess you could say, early 2010s. Glock Generation 4 was making a very heavy debut and people were enjoying it. People were definitely liking the new adaptions, the new variety that was being added to the Glock family. And even then, as I did say earlier, you got Glocks that are rare and collectible to some. So keep that in mind. There are Glocks that, yeah, you have your everyday, Glock 17, 19, however you'd like to carry. But then you do have those extra rare generations that can, add some value and add just a little bit more of a coolness factor to that actual Glock model that you're looking into. So, but finally, we're gonna go ahead and get to the one and only, the big daddy of them all, current and present day, the Generation 5, which in August 2017, Glock presented its fifth generation or Gen 5. The revision centered on ergonomics and improving reliability. Um, Many parts of the fifth generation Glock pistols cannot be interchanged with those of the previous generation. So do keep that in mind. If you get a Generation 5, it's not going to be as easily swapped out as the other generation models would be. So it's just something to consider. The two fifth generation models announced were the Glock 17 and Glock 19, and they were both chambered in 9x19 parabellum, so 9 millimeter ultimately. Some conspicuous, excuse me, some conscious changes on the fifth. I said conspicuous. What does that even mean? Some conscious changes on the fifth generation models are ambidextrous slide stop levers, DLC surface finish for barrel and slide, a barrel featuring a revised style of polygon. Excuse me, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly. Polygonal rifling called the Glock Marksman barrel by Glock, a deeper recessed barrel crown, omission of the finger grooves on the grip, a flared magazine well, and the reintroduction of a half moon shaped cutout on the bottom front of the grip. So pretty much, like I said, reinventing the wheel, meanwhile keeping it the same. It's really nice to see the innovation that Glock goes through. They're not caught up on necessarily just being stuck on tradition all the time. They do like to be expansive, and they do like to kind of change up and see what they can experiment with, and that's pretty cool to see with Glock. But either way, the locking block pin located above the trigger pin was introduced in the third generation and is admitted. Many internal parts were less cons- conspicuously revised, and Gen 5 is rail marked on the slide next to the model number to identify the Gen 5 pistols. So same as I said with Gen 4, they kind of started stamping their, G on it, they really started to make sure that they were taking themselves just as serious as everyone else was taking them. And that's really cool to see that with the fifth generation and the fourth, you're able to see it'll actually say, hey, this is fourth generation, this is fifth, as to where the other ones, it's a little bit more or less, you got to really know a little bit more in depth about those generations to actually understand whether or not this is a actual Gen 3, 2, or 1 you might be looking at. And as I did say, the Gen 5 slide can feature front serrations to provide an additional technical traction surface choice. The magazines were also revised for the fifth generation models. The redesigned magazines, like floor plates, feature a frontward protruding lip to offer grip for manual assisted extraction, and the magazine follower became orange colored for easier visual identification. So In our magazines, we usually got a different, or a certain color that we may have the actual slide go up and down on the follower. And Glock chose a very significant color that very much so allowed for you to see it and know, oh, that's a Glock mag. You don't have to question too much whether or not it's a Glock mag. Glock has always made sure they stood out, meanwhile staying very simplistic in a lot of different ways, and I love that and I respect that about Glock. So, um, Glock has long made its mark, uh, as I did say, with how they innovate consistently and upgrade their product, and the variety offered also helps to keep their name in relation to an ever evolving client list or just situations. Truly, there are many different categories as well as calibers for Glock. Let's run through some. Kind of to start, we're going to go ahead. Like following the Glock 17, numerous variants and versions have been offered. Variants that differ in caliber, frame, and slide length are identified by different model numbers, with the exception of the Glock 17L, 19X, and 43X. Okay, so Glock pistols are made in five form factors, all modeled after the original sized Glock 17. Standard models are designed as full-size duty firearms with a large magazine capacity. Compact models are slightly smaller with reduced magazine capacity and lightweight while maintaining a usable grip length. Like you can still, get some good, you know, grip on that. So ultimately, subcompact models are designed for easier carry and being lighter and shorter, and are intended to be used with two fingers on the grip below the trigger guard and lack an accessory rail like the larger counterparts after Generation 2 Glock model. So the 45 ACP and 10 millimeter auto models have bigger, wider slides and a slightly larger than smaller chambered pistols or excuse me, than the smaller chamber pistols, and are available in the subcompact models Glock 29 10 millimeter auto and Glock 30 45 ACP. Glock produces 5 models of single stock slimline subcompact pistols: the Glock 36 and 45 ACP, the Glock 42 and 380 ACP, and the Glock 43, 43X, and 48 and 9 by 19 millimeter. The 43X and 48 have longer grips and allow for a full 3 finger hold and a 10 round capacity. Competition versions have longer barrels and slides, adjustable sights, and extendable slide and magazine release. Beginning in 2007, Glock introduced several short frame models designed by the suffix SF. The short frame was originally designed to compete in the now canceled U.S. military joint combat pistol trials for a new 45 ACP pistol to replace the M19 pistol, Beretta. Glock's entry featured an optional ambidextrous magazine release and MIL STD 1913 rail, along with a reduction in the size of the backstrap. The Glock 21 SF is currently available in 3 versions: one with a Picatinny rail and ambidextrous magazine release, and two with a universal Glock rail available with or without the ambidextrous magazine release. Current 10 millimeter and 45 ACP Glock magazines are manufactured with ambidextrous magazine release cutouts. As of January 2009, the Glock 20, 21, 29, and 30 were offered in short frame variations. These models incorporate a 2.5 millimeter reduction in trigger reach, and full size models feature a 4 millimeter reduction in heel depth, which corresponds to an overall reduction in length for those models. On the 1st of September 2020, the United States firearms distributor Lipsy's unveiled an exclusive commemorative Glock model, the Pistola 80. So as I did kind of announced earlier, way back in the 1980, it kind of got reintroduced in a way. The Glock P80 is a very rare one in a way, in its historical reproduction of the original version of the Glock, which was adapted, like I said, by the Austrian Army in 1982. And the result was submitted to the Austrian Army pistol trials, and it won back at that time. So P80 definitely was going to make its way back into the game at some point, and it's kind of like a throwback to the original Glock 17, Generation 1 type pistol that was chambered in 9 by 19 millimeter, and it was made by Austria. So uh, ultimately, Lipsy had Glock reproduce the original Tupperware pill top box and enclose it in commemorative magnetic closure box with all of the original accessories and a certificate of authenticity. The slide and barrel are marked Glock P80 9 by 19 in the original fonts. The Austrian government would not allow Glock to recreate the Austrian Army approved designations of the slide, barrel, or frame. In the Pistola 80 frame has the original Glock solid medium smooth trigger, single pin, no rail, and wraparound pebble texture on the grip and front of the trigger guard. The slide is coated with the new NDLC coating with an emphasis on replicating the original gray Tennifer finish as closely as possible. So ultimately, the first pistol 80s delivered to the Austrian Army had 13.5 millimeter barrels. Whew. Man, that's man, dang near rifle, man. But Glock was not willing to reproduce the smaller profile barrel due to safety concerns, and the claw extractor has the original flat profile of Gen 1 and 2. Internally, the parts are compatible with Gen 1, 2, and 3. The supply magazines are Gen 4 type, and the initial production run is limited to 10,000 units. The first 5,000 available as of September 1st, 2020, with an additional 5,000 units in the following 30 to 60 days. I truly believe, of course, the variety keeps everyone happy, but it's also historic in a way to see the impact that this manufacturer in today's society, like what it has had. Glock is world renowned. Thank you, Mr. Gaston Glock, of course. And it's awesome to see the love that they receive here in the United States of America. But they also receive it in other countries as well, with their forces and civilians to some extent. So I just think Glock is definitely a dominant force in the firearms realm, the 2A community, and they're not anything to joke around about, because they definitely put their impact and put their set, or they set their feet in the sand, and it's definitely been planted. It's starting to fossilize in a way. So it's just one of those things that, like I said, I have a high respect for. But over here in America, we definitely love Glock, but it's not just here in America. You can enjoy it in other countries. You'll see, of course, like I said, I spoke on Austria more or less because that's his country of origin. But even there, it's not looked at the same way as it is here in America. But you have Glock in other parts of the world as well. Aside from the original Austrian company, like Glock pistols are manufactured by Glock Incorporated, the subsidiary division located in the United States. So for the most part, we do have them made here in America. Those batches are identical compared to the Austrian-made ones, but they are marked as USA instead of Austria. We know as Americans, we love to make sure we put our name on it. Like to make sure we're proud of what we do in our work, and nothing wrong with that. Same as Austria, they stamp their name on their Glock as well. So on the slide, more or less. And Glock 17 pistols are being assembled locally at Army workshops in, excuse me, I want to make sure I'm getting this correctly, Uruguay, to fulfill the needs of the National Army Services and law enforcement organizations. The 205th Armory in Taiwan produces a copy of the Glock 19 named the T97, I believe, pistol. And the Taiwan-made Glocks were made to replace the Smith & Wesson model 59 '06 used by the Taiwan police, but it ultimately did not enter service. The Turkish company Agdal Arms produces a pistol named the Ghost TR-01, which is heavily influenced by Glock pistols in its design. Um, Russian firms such as Skat, uh, Orsis, um, and Izmash assembled three models of Glock pistols locally: the Glock 17, 34, and 35. There are three sidearms made by Iranian Shahid Kaveh Industry Complex, which they call Ra'ad, has a safety selector, possibly, or an unlicensed copy of Glock 17, and Glock 19 and Kaveh. So Glock 19 and Kaveh 17, probably an improved Ra'ad, a variant of Glock 17S, uh, which all of them are unlicensed clones of the Glock pistols. So not really supposed to be doing it, but Glock is just, yeah, everyone to some degree, they're honorable. You got to respect their craft, man. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing when it comes to simplicity in firearms and getting the work done. So Glock pistols, once again, it is not known that they could make their way to Iranian military and place the Browning high power M19 and SIG P226 pistols, and they were possibly like prototypes, and they have never gone on like mass production in those countries. So, luckily enough, it's not too much that has happened with those. But at the end of the day, um, you see that other countries other than the United States, they take note too. They see what Glock has done to the world of firearms, and they don't necessarily want to, I guess you could say, invent a new one themselves, but they want to be inspired in a way and kind of, produce their own. And it's not necessarily the most appropriate thing, but it just shows like I said, the impact, the true influence, and the true culture of Glock, man. Um, and just its predecessors in general. They're currently being manufactured, uh, like I said, in a plethora of places, but the subsidiary Glock Incorporated is in the United States. So you can have a Glock that is made here in the United States of America, and you can have a Glock that is made in Austria. But these other countries are producing their own, I guess you could say, versions of, like, it's wild to say, but they really are. They're producing their own versions of Glock, and it's not necessarily licensed, but it shows like I said, the impact, the true pull that they have in the firearm world, because everyone wants to get a bit of that recognition ultimately to say, hey, we are just as effective with this version of ours as Austria was with theirs. And sometimes you see a replication can be almost as good, but it almost never touches the original. But you see a replication could be very well done and can be very respectable in a way, and you see some replicas that can be very uh heinous and um not to be messed with at all. Just to stay away from that kind of background, if that's what they're doing. So ultimately, Glock is awesome. I love what Glock has done. Thank you for tuning in to 063 Tactical Tuesday Live once again. I just want to kind of go into a actual list of just the different, I guess you could say, models, calibers, and just yeah, the models and calibers of Glock ultimately, because it's a list, man. Glock has very much so been extensive, but I'm gonna go ahead and say caliber, and then I'll go ahead and give you the model to see which one of you guys, hey, and you guys go ahead and tell me which one is your favorite Glock, man. Which one of these calibers, which category, which model is your favorite, which one you love, all that. I love to hear it. But we're gonna go ahead and start off with the 9 millimeters, which I have a Glock 26, So any guys, any gals that do not know the specific models, specific calibers, this is the time to get the list. It is there, and it is good information to know because you want to know these different models, man. Not everyone knows the difference between them. But like I said, Glock 26 to start off the list. That is 9mm. I'm going to start from nines. G19, so Glock 19, 9mm. Glock 46, 9mm. Glock 19X, 9mm. Glock 45, 9mm. Glock 17, 9mm. Glock 18, 9mm. Glock 47, 9mm. P80, as I stated, that rare collectible one, 9mm. G34, Glock 34, 9mm. And Glock 17 long, 9mm. You have a Glock 43 slim, 9mm. Glock 43X slim, 9mm. And a Glock 48 slim, 9mm. Gonna go ahead and hop into our 40 Smith & Wessons. We got our Glock 27, 40 Smith & Wesson. Glock 23, 40 Smith & Wesson. Glock 22, 40 Smith & Wesson. Glock 35, 40 Smith & Wesson. We got our Glock 24, 40 Smith & Wesson. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the 380. We got Glock 28, 380. Glock 25, 380. Glock 42, slim, 380. We got Glock 29 for our 10mm auto. So 10mm next. Glock 20 for 10mm. Glock 40 for 10mm. We have a Glock 30 for 45 ACP. Glock 21, 45 ACP. Glock 41, 45 ACP. 45 ACP, excuse me. Glock 36 Slim, 45 ACP. Glock 33, 357 SIG. Glock 32, 357 SIG. Glock 31, 357 SIG. Glock 39, 45 GAP. Glock 38, 45 GAP. Glock 37, 45 GAP. And the final one to end the list is the fun one of all of them, the Glock 44 22 long rifle. So you got 22, 45 GAP, 357, 45 ACP, 10mm, 380, 40 Smith & Wesson, and 9mm that Glock manufactures and produces firearms for. So definitely got variety. You definitely got choice. You definitely got options. For my Glock heads out there, like I said, headache. That list, that list is extensive. But if you take the time to study it and truly learn it, you too can become a Glock expert. And they are a great manufacturer overall. I just wanted to go ahead and go into a bit of the history of Glock because it is such a popular manufacturer and firearm. It is used in so many terminologies. We use it quite commonly in a lot of different music art forms, movies. You see this firearm used in movies, shows, different things. Glock has made its stay in the game and in our lives, whether we realize the impact or not. And not to say every impact has been good. So no disrespect to anyone, but just to say ultimately we appreciate Glock here at 063 Tactical. Thank you once again for tuning in to 063 Tactical Tuesday live. Once again, we'll see you on the next episode. And remember to subscribe, get familiar with that notification bell, like and share the stream. We appreciate all participants and feedback in the lives. And it's more than taken, with a grain of salt. When you give us some feedback, man, we don't take everything with a grain of salt. I don't, definitely. My team doesn't. We definitely don't. So leave a comment for anything you'd like to potentially hear in one of these lives. We do our best to apply constructive criticism and not be offended by it by any means. Either way, have a great evening. This is your man Lazarus Zander signing off for the night. 063 Tactical. We're out, man.